You're listening to More Than Reports, and I'm your host, Paul B. Felix.
How would you measure the value of a data solution? Well, in this episode, Paul and Alex are going to explore the best ways to evaluate the success of your investments in data technology and reporting systems. Tune in and find out their insights on making smart data decisions and ultimately how much they're really worth.
So, Paul, if I have $100,000 I can invest on an energy saving program, I know exactly what I'm up against. I want my energy bill to come down by 100,000 or more. That's the return I can expect or want in my investment on my energy saving program. Now, I'm a company leader, and my team tells me we should have management dashboards. How do I manage the return on that investment? It's going to cost us money. People are going to, contribute time. We're going to have to hire vendors, maybe invest in a little bit of technology. Is there a return on investment on management dashboards?
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, the answer is yes, but let's just cover a couple of things here. I think that are fundamental to what you're talking about. Number one, every company's biggest investment is people, right? I think that's where it starts. Not every, but virtually every company's biggest cost is going to be labor, from top of the company all the way down to individual contributors. That's going to be the largest cost. If you believe that a company's success is going to be determined by those people's ability to make decisions that have good outcomes or positive outcomes, if that's what you believe, then how important is it to make sure that those decisions are actually done or actually have good outcomes? It's critical. There's a couple of points here. I know we're kind of in the weeds here, philosophical, but I think it is important. Do we believe that the cumulative decision-making ability of an organization's people is what determines whether that organization is successful? That's fundamental before we try to make better decisions. Do we actually believe that's critical for a company's success? I believe that. I believe that if we're talking about company A, well, there's also a company B, C, and D out there competing for the same business. And something is going to differentiate one or two of those companies from the others. What is it going to be? Well, it could be things like innovation. It could be simple timing, go to market. There are a lot of factors, but I think a critical factor, again, is the people in that organization, their ability to make good decisions and hopefully take action on those decisions and see them through. Okay, so let's just say we agree that the decision-making ability of every organization is what's going to determine that organization's success. And it's a scale, right? It's not you either succeed or fail, but how successful will that organization be? If we believe that, then how important is it for everyone in that organization to have the information they need to understand the environment that they're operating in so they can actually make informed decisions? Again, it's critical. That, to me, that simple little thought process there, it's the decision-making that's going to determine the organization's success, or at least part of it, a very significant part of it, I would argue. And B, if we believe that, how important is it to make sure those people have the information they need to actually make informed decisions? So to me, it's fundamental, Alex, back to what you started with here. An organization's success, to me, really depends on everyone in that organization, from individual contributors to the highest of all of the leaders and executives. It depends on everyone in that organization having the information they need to make good decisions every single day. I think that's the value. To me, I don't want to. I know it may sound like I'm overstating it, but I believe that is fundamental to the overall organization's success.
So, at a basic level, if I hear you right, it's like operating anything without any indicators of where you're going. Flying blind, you can think any kind of metaphor. Flying blind, driving your car without a dash, uh,
Right.
saving without ever getting a bank statement. Um, so we live in the other day. Well, it's been a while, but we heard about a quantifiable world. Everything needs to be counted. So at a basic level, what we're saying is it's very hard to manage anything without understanding quantities these days. And if anything, these systems, and we, I guess for convenience, are just calling them dashboards, which are basically a collection of these indicators. They help us understand performance, and that's absolutely critical when you're trying to execute pretty much anything. Look at athletes in sports these days. It's hard to have any discussion without very quickly going into numbers. How many rebounds, how many assists, how many sacks, pick your sport, and a multitude of statistics are going to come your way. Back to business, though, one of the very common pressures in business is, but I want to account for it. And some people are very quickly challenged. No, it's more basic than that. We shouldn't account for it. Well, good luck having that kind of discussion with a CFO that's scrutinizing your investment. Uh, Typically, I'm not going to say all of them, but it won't be uncommon for one of them or some of them to say, right, let's do the math. Right,
Mhm.
what can I expect when I look back at my P&L at the close of next year? What is your contribution going to be to this? Um, I have some strong thoughts there. What are yours?
So if I'm understanding you, you're saying, well, if we're going to actually put some numbers to this, if we're going to make an investment in some type of dashboarding effort, how do I determine the incremental improvement or the return on that investment from a dollars standpoint?
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
it's
Tricky,
I
right?
would say it's challenging, right? It's
Yeah.
challenging because if the dashboard is very, very successful, right? It's very successful. It helps people understand the environment. It gets them, actually shifts an organization to a data-driven culture and just overall lifts the organization. It's attribution that's the problem because it's not just the dashboard that did that. It's people that did that. And people are part of business processes. And those business processes are impacted by way more than just a dashboard. It's just one component of success. So how do you isolate that component and say, well, we spent X dollars on this thing and a year ago. Now, what has been the direct impact of that thing? I mean, there's ways to do it, but it is not a black and white situation. Would be, I
Well,
guess, my short answer there.
I'll contribute my suggestion, and you let me know what you think of that. We work with clients exactly that way. Let's think through the life cycle of these initiatives, and we live that every day. Clients come and say, we need these things organized. We are all over the board. We don't have our metrics. And where do we start? Very commonly, we're going to get a list of KPIs. Hey, these are all indicators I need to measure for my business. If they don't have those ready for us, we'll work with them and prepare an inventory of indicators and say, we want to see how many units shipped by week per plant to a certain customer. There you go. You have one metric. Did you have that before? Say you didn't. And that's where I think we can start. It's not as trivial or straightforward as my initial example. We want to save energy. Well, if you want to save energy, you got to put up some money to improve your energy systems. That's very, very straightforward. But if you're running a business without ever caring about a metric, what power would that metric unlock? What value would that metric unlock for you? And I'm going to go right back to where you took us, to your people. If you're operating without knowing how many times you are being effective in what you do, and now you do, you have the ability to measure the trend in that metric, and using the value acquired through that metric is not impossible. It's laborious. You may have too many metrics, but you can start with a couple and measure, well, how many clients, well, how many fewer clients did we lose this year since we started measuring?
Yeah,
And you could,
you
at
could.
partially attribute some of that reduction to the fact that your team now is paying attention to something that they in the past might not even be aware of. And I'm
Right.
going to the end metric, which is the client loss. But clients go for a number of reasons. They may have several support tickets, they may have delayed orders. There's got to be a metric that you can associate to client satisfaction that once you start tracking that, can help you prevent that client from lapsing in the first place. And I think you could easily attribute that result to the fact that your team now can see that, whereas before they couldn't. What do you think?
I think there's a couple of problems or challenges, I would say. Um, the first thing is, are we going to assume that there was no visibility into this metric beforehand, this hypothetical visibility? We didn't know anything about where we were or where we were going before we had this KPI. Is that the scenario we're talking about?
That's a good one. I like the way you phrased that. We were put a bunch of smart people together, and these ideas are going to come up very quickly. And they're going to know. They deal with clients, and there is anecdotal evidence. And I'm going to stick to my client labs example here. People dealing with clients, they know. Clients tell them. Uh, but organizations become quickly complex, and I don't want to diminish the importance of that. The fact that one individual is aware of something is far from guaranteeing that the whole organization can uh, act together in coordination to get something done. And I believe metrics are a catalyst to that.
Okay. So
The
what we're saying,
idea of making those very public and visible will trigger behaviors from those that can enforce them and those that need to follow them, such that certain things are done in the end. So yes, I am going to be a little bit ambitious here and state that if you have those done, you can at the end attribute, if not 100%, a good portion of that improvement to the fact that you built, and I'm going to skip dashboard, that you started tracking that metric. The dashboard is just the delivery mechanism, right? That you organize your team and said, guys, we need to have these metrics in front of ourselves at a certain cadence or frequency, and we're going to track this. And we need to set some goals, and we're going to pursue those goals. And in the end, if we hit them, look at that. There is an R in ROI for us.
yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. If you start with the basis that we only anecdotally understand where we are on some performance metric, churn is what we're talking about in this example, then um, you know, if if you measure the value of beginning to of having a dashboard as the incremental improvement from day one of implementing the dashboard, and then a year later, how do we look? So just to put that in more concrete terms, if we're saying that if we're going to measure churn and we're going to do an absolute value, how many clients did we lose? Let's say that's the measure that you're proposing. Okay, well, that's a lagging indicator. So maybe we're doing a how many clients did we lose this month type of thing. And let's just say it's a high churn business, whatever. Okay, so on day one, we implement the dashboard. We're losing 5 clients per month, and then 1 year later, just simply by exposing that number, we've put a spotlight on that challenge of losing clients at that rate. And maybe a year later, we're now losing whatever 3 clients per month, right? We've taken action to reduce that churn. So yes, you could measure that. That's you're losing less clients, so there's a value of a client. Well, now you have a dollar value that you can associate with implementing the dashboard.
Right, but it's the dashboards does not prevent clients from canceling. People looking at them, and I'm going to write back to what you started us on. It's the people.
Right.
So the value of, and I even hesitate to repeat dashboards too many times. The value of metrics, the value of measurements, is that it influences people's behaviors, right?
Exactly.
And it's simply a catalyst. And why would you do that? Because it's the most efficient way of doing that.
Yeah, it's putting a spotlight on something that's important to the business. Um, I'm hung up on the attribution, Alex. You can measure that value as we just described, right? If you're the bean counter, you can say, oh, well, look, here we did this, and now we're here. Great, here's a incremental improvement. That was successful ROI on this thing. Which, by the way, the ROI on these things should be um, way outweighed, right? We should have 10, 20x ROI. When you're talking about implementing a dashboard, it it should be extremely valuable to the organization if you look at it in the terms that you're talking about. The thing that I'm hesitant about is saying that it was only the dashboard that
Correct.
caused that change, right? Because as we started out here, people have to use that dashboard, and then they have to take that dashboard and say, okay, use their human gray matter, right, their brain, and come to some insightful decision. Now I have information. I know where we are. I understand the challenges. Maybe I've gone out and I've talked to the people that are actually responsible for retaining clients. I understand where we are. I understand what the challenges are. Now I have to come up with some theory about what needs to change. Not, just having the dashboard is not a change, but something has to now change in the actual actions we're taking in order to capture some additional value. So there's a lot of things, and then the change has to happen, right? Then we have to take that action and measure, continue to measure, and see the results, and then adjust and make sure that same methodology is pervasive throughout the organization. So there's a lot of work that has to happen. Do you attribute all of that to the investment in a dashboard? I think it's a critical just point, but it's not all of it, right? It's not the whole thing.
I wouldn't go as far as that. I certainly wouldn't. But I go back to one term I use. I think it is a key catalyst. Not
Oh yeah,
having a central repository where, as a team, we can look at and measure these things very publicly. Uh,
right.
I'm a big believer. Though dashboards metrics are key in producing that.
Yeah, let's walk through the scenario. Let's say we don't have the
Yeah,
dashboard, right? We
correct.
don't have it. So now, what is the scenario? Everyone in the organization um, is left to their own means to figure out where things are. And what is that going to be? It could be that the source system has some information, right? Whatever business system we're using, maybe there's a way of kind of figuring things out. Inevitably, that's going to mean that not everybody is on the same sheet of music. And it's going to mean that a lot of people just simply don't do it. They don't, they're not going to go in there and do the research to figure out where we are. So it's in disarray from day one,
Right.
um, which is not, you just can't get to that same end without having the company as a whole have a common understanding of where we are and what are the challenges, what are we going to change, where do we want to be. Yeah, that's just so basic, right? It's like you can't even, I don't see how you could possibly be successful without in some way getting the organization to that common understanding. It doesn't have to be some elaborate, business intelligence data warehousing solution here. We're not talking about the mechanism at this point. We're just saying somehow or another, we got to get everybody on the same sheet of music so they all agree. This is where we're at today. This is where we need to get to. Let's fill the gap.
And naturally, people have initiative, and that's such a beautiful thing to observe. But you were describing what we come across very routinely is, yeah, this person in that department, they're getting it done. They get their files, they get their printouts, they go count, they go do whatever it takes to measure and contribute to the organization. Is that done in coordination with a greater goal? That's a big risk. As organizations become more complex, you may be misinterpreting the metric. You may actually be going in the wrong direction, counter to the overall goal of the organization. So, what we're talking about here at the end of the day goes far beyond attributing a number to one investment in a little piece of technology called dashboards or business
Right.
intelligence. It's
Yeah.
how do you run a business?
That's right.
And all
That's
businesses become more and more complex. And having these agreed upon sets of metrics I can't get around the fact that they're absolutely critical for you to coordinate disparate teams.
It is a
Right,
business function, as we've said many times, Alex.
right,
This is not something that, um, from it's almost kind of hard for me to get my head around someone trying to go and say, okay, well, we implement this metric in a dashboard. What was the value of that in a year? It's so fundamental to an organization in the way I think about successful organizations, that I don't know how you could decide to not go down this road. So you're either deciding either we're going to manage the organization with the benefit of understanding um, the results of our activities. That's it. We're going to measure based on our own results, or we're not. We're going to take it day by day, and we're just going to say, okay, how do we feel today? Yeah, great. I'm pretty sure this is what we should do next. Or you can say, look, this is what we've been doing, guys. This is not working. We need to make an adjustment here. It's cultural. It's you either are going to run a business by the numbers or you're not. I guess there's scales between there, right? There's various degrees of those two extremes, but to me it is a business function that it's running a business with the benefit of having information available to make decent decisions, and even that is a something we should really dive into. Maybe not on this discussion, but what does it mean to make a decision? How does this information actually improve those decisions? What are the factors that are going to determine if people are going to actually use that information to make decisions? Because it isn't like if you just serve up a dashboard, everybody's magically going to start going and looking at that dashboard and thinking about it in the same way. Some are going to
correct.
ignore it. Some are going to be religious about it, and everything in between is going to exist. So there's a lot of challenges even in there between delivering a dashboard and seeing the benefits of the dashboard.
Exactly right. And I keep thinking of how would you run a business? I think you brought that up quickly there. I always think, well, first we can look at our bank account. Is the balance going up? That might be a good sign. Although we
Right.
have no idea if we owe too much money to anyone. Maybe we're drowning in debt, and well, you may need another. I think at the point I'm trying to make it, it gets complicated very, very quickly. It's so easy to misinterpret these metrics. Do I have more clients now than I have last year? Let's do a quick count. Say we have hundreds of them. Someone can pull up some lists, and yet you are so far from what really makes those numbers go in a certain direction. And that's where I think these metrics are absolutely critical to running any business with a moderate level of complexity these days. Your count of customers depends on your efforts to promote your product, your efforts to sell to those clients. Your profitability is even more complex. Think of any business. How many factors impact bottom line? It could be you're selling more, but it could be you're spending less. And in between those seemingly two simple variables, so much complexity can go in. There could be time effects. So what's the right way to put in ROI for dashboards? I'm going to ask you that question, Paul. If you're going to, okay, let's agree now that these systems are critical for me to run a business with any degree of sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about uh, evaluating and implementing these such that in the end we say, guys, this had that transformational power that we expected for our business? What have you seen working or not?
Usually whenever we engage with a new client, there's a problem somewhere, and they already know what that problem is. Um, it could be, it could just be that they simply realize that they don't have this information at their fingertips, and they know that they're just kind of winging it on a day to day basis, or maybe they do have information, but they're having to go, manually cultivate it from a variety of systems and have logistical problems with consolidating an enterprise view of things. There's all kind of things going on. Um, but I would say, I mentioned the problem thing because usually that's what motivates somebody to do something is they recognize there's a problem, or maybe another way of saying that they recognize that, look, if I can improve this thing, it would be game changing for the organization. and they know what that thing is, and they're usually coming to us with that insight from day one. And people are usually pretty in tune, with what's going on inside their organization. They know where the challenges are. They know where the opportunities are. But that aside, if we assume there was no insight into where the opportunities or challenges are today that need to be addressed, it would just be I would just take a top-down approach to it. I would just through interview process try to figure out what a company's financial model looks like or operating model looks like. What are the key indicators of success for that organization, and then would break them down into eventually KPIs that can help monitor that particular key performance indicator. That's the way we would do it, and we do it. From the methodology standpoint, it would be done in an iterative way. I think I'm shifting topics here a little bit, but one of the problems we often see is people want to get all of this in place. Like people get excited about, that makes a lot of sense. I need dashboards and I need them for everything. Let's get all of these KPIs in place yesterday, right? And that's great if you can do that, but it's pretty challenging to do because every one of these measurements that we're taking about your organization's activities requires thought. Even the simple ones, like you mentioned, how many clients are we losing? That even could not be a simple thing, right? How do you define a lost client? In some organizations, that may not be the most clear thing to describe. Does it mean they haven't purchased for 6 months? Does it mean they canceled a subscription? There's black and white ways of defining that, and there's gray ways of defining that. And then what about when we get the client back online, how are we going to handle that? So there's questions that need to be answered for typically every one of these KPIs, and it shouldn't be glossed over. It should be given the appropriate amount of time to think about and get input collect input from all those contributors that are influencing that particular performance metric.
True, and that sends me to what I think is at the very core of everything we're talking about here. Once you start thinking about this, your mind will naturally gravitate to, I guess, one of our favorite concepts, Paul, value. How do you define value for your organization, not any organization, your organization, at this precise time? There is the timeline and there is the place and the time, right? Where you are, meaning the competitive environment, the sector, the industry, what you're trying to do for your clients, for society, and at that particular set of circumstances. It could be a recession, it could be a period of fast growth, anything. You could be, so when you look at your business, what represents value? If you're the owner of the business, you probably want that business to be worth more. Well, if you're short on cash, you might want that to be worth a little less, but a little more cash rich. And that's very subtle. You may be not making as much money while increasing the value of the firm. Say you want to sell your business,
Right.
or you don't want to sell your business and you want to produce more cash. So very quickly, the conversation gets um, advanced.
It
And I
does.
think
Yeah.
it is business managers' responsibility to understand that very deeply. And there is no better way of doing that than getting the whole team together and saying, we're going to collect the metrics that we believe that collectively those metrics will tell us, are we or are we not being successful in building value for us? Value could be, I'm going to finish with that. Bottom line profitability, as in accounting profitability. We may not be doing a lot of cash, but we're doing okay on the value creation side. And that's a subtle difference, but a very important one. But there are other business that should not care about profitability and should invest everything on growth because they have enough margin and enough capital potentially. And those are what is the best tool to help management understand where to go than one single collection that you can go back and forth in the different areas of your business that will tell you how you're performing in those different metrics that ultimately will bring you to that goal of creating value.
Totally agree with everything. I just would say that in addition to those very strategic decisions about the direction of the organization and overall what the organization is trying to achieve, there's also the very tactical things that happen every day. So I just want to make it clear when we talk about dashboards, we're not just talking about those executive dashboards. We're talking about middle management dashboards, individual contributor dashboards. Everyone in the organization needs to understand their role, and they need the information that they need to make good decisions, regardless of how routine those decisions might be, seemingly, or how non-routine, I guess, strategic those decisions might be. It's across the board. But I'm with you on what you just described there. It's crucial that the overall organization has some type of cohesive direction that we're going in here. To recap what you said, is this an organization that's all about capturing market share over profitability? Is that what we're going for? That's important to understand in how we operate, because we're not going to pay as much attention to expenses in this case, right? We're going to pay attention to growth.
Top line.
Or are we is this a practice group that's all about efficiency? That's a whole different paradigm when you talk about those two types of companies, and that's got to be understood from day one.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for watching. See you guys next time.
Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. Our contact information is in the podcast description below. See you in the next episode.